Well, good evening. And welcome. I am Robert Shapiro, the Interim Dean of Emory Law School, and we're so pleased you could all be with us on this wonderful evening as we celebrate our dear colleague Nathaniel Gozansky as he claims to be retiring, though I'm not sure we can believe that. So, we'll be having some remarks tonight by people who've known Nat at various times in his career here. But I wanted to begin by reading something that was sent in. Unfortunately, someone who cannot be here this evening is former Dean Howard Woody Hunter, who was a dynamic duo with Nat for a long time. So Woody was sorry he could not be here, but he sent in the following, which I'll excerpt more or less, because it's a little long. All right, but Susan and I wish we could be there in person to honor Nat on his retirement. But even if we are not there in body, we are certainly there in spirit. And that certainly goes for many, many others who wanted to be here tonight. Nat has been a member of the Emory Law School community for almost half the existence of the law school. And the institution, and it's not a young institution. All right. And the institution is a better place for his having been a major participant in law school's development for almost half a century. Nat served Emory in many capacities, but I must mention his great importance as an associate dean. He was invaluable to me, and I'm sure that David Epstein would agree, and we will have David Epstein to see if he does agree, that Nat was invaluable because he was always candid. One of the most important jobs of an associate dean is to manage the dean. And Nat was a master at that task. He was also very good at another associate dean task, making the job fun. Nat can always see the humor in a situation, and he has a remarkable capacity to put things into perspective. Now, law is, of course, about more than technical knowledge, and Nat constantly reminded us that our main purpose as lawyers is to seek justice and fairness. His work with CLEO, the Council on Legal Educational Opportunity, in the early days, and his continuing work with outreach programs, legal aid, and many other activities demonstrated to all of us the importance of the work of lawyers in the effort to create and maintain a fair, civilized, and just society. His voice has remained strong over the years and will, I am sure, remain just as strong in the future. More recently, Nat has offered two important life lessons. First, how to make a great martini. Second, how to be a grandparent. These skills are not equal in importance. Woody doesn't actually say which is more important, but in any event, Nat's been great at both. I have a hard time thinking of Emory Law School without Nat, but happily he is close by, and we continue to enjoy good times together looking at Carl Mullis's latest additions to his art collection or reviewing them at a museum, doing critical analyses of barbecue offerings at different locations, and figuring out what area of the world should next be explored. With my best wishes to Nat and to Libby, and with thanks for having been such a great contributor to life and development of the law school and for your friendship. So that's the remarks of one dean who served a long time with Nat, Woody Hunter. And now we're pleased to introduce another former dean who spent a long time with Nat, who will be David Epstein, who appointed Nat as associate dean shortly after Dean Epstein became the dean. Obviously, he saw there were latent administrative talents that others apparently had missed, but were untapped. And apparently working together with Nat was the basis for a lifelong friendship. David is currently the George E. Allen Chair Professor of Law at the University of Richmond School of Law. So, Dean Epstein.
Good evening. What a wonderful world this is. It just doesn't get much better than this. Having the opportunity to be back, Tall Auditorium, talking to the Emory Law community, and this time talking to the Emory Law community about my friend Nat Gozansky. Now, before I get into my remarks, let me assure both the acting dean and his development officer that I will adhere to the guidelines that I won't go over 5 minutes. Won't go over 5 minutes. That's been told over and over, and so I say that by way of reassurance to all of you who have looked at this damn program and seen that there are 17 speakers. How long am I going to be here? Friendship for Nat will only take you so far. So I can't commit for the rest of them. I just want to say three things. First, Nat Gozansky is an uncommonly good person. An uncommonly good person. I have never heard or seen Nat be mean-spirited, be petty, be spiteful. Nat is a good person. Second, Nat is hell on problems. He's just hell on problems. Now, I can't speak to his ability to manage deans. That was at best a mixed experience for Nat. But Nat is hell on problems, in part because I gave him so much practice. He is hell not only on solving problems, but is even better on eliminating problems. So that's the second thing that I want to say. Third, Nat understands that what this is all about is the students. This place exists for the students. Dean Shapiro has his job because of the students. I have my job teaching school because of the students. This is all about the students. And as a classroom teacher, as an administrator, Nat always put the students first. That's why so many of his former students are here tonight. That's why former students have made gifts, significant gifts, to this law school because of Nat. Nat understands that this is all about the students. Now, one concluding comment. I said I would just say three things, but I haven't used my 5 minutes up. One concluding comment. Looking at the first row, I of course see Nat's family and understand, knowing Nat, that y'all are going to be an important part of the program. But let me just say one thing to Michelle, to Elliot, and to Shama, and that is that you guys should be as proud of your dad as he is of you. And I'm proud that Nat's my friend. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks.
As Dean Epstein emphasized, Nat has always been focused on students and on their great contribution to the community and supporting students in all they do. And in fact, if we had all the students who'd benefited from Nat speak tonight, then there would be over 1,700 speakers instead of only 17. So we don't have all of the students, but we do have one student to speak a little bit about her experience in Nat's class. Student Ashley Payne, class of 2013, who was in Nat's last class here at Emory. Her smiling face greeted him every day, as Nat's smiling face has greeted so many generations of students. So, Ashley.
It was the end of first semester of my 1L year, and my classmates and I were asking our professor, how in the world should we approach our exams? Our professor began to recount a rather odd story of his law school days and left us with the phrase, ropes and cows. Now, admittedly, none of us knew where this was going, but we went with it, and it became very useful. You see, Professor Gozansky explained that there is going to be a lot of information on the exam, and like frantic and inexperienced law students, we were going to try to make all of it important. But some of it would be facts, would be ropes, while others would be cows. And ultimately, the goal was to have more cows than ropes. Well, what could be a more perfect way than to tell you about the ropes and cows of why we love Professor Gozansky? Well, perhaps there's a rope for being sarcastically funny the entire semester. He was never afraid to push the envelope when joking and perhaps even borderline offending your alma mater. But I'd give him a cow for knowing exactly where Fisk University was and several facts about it because it was my alma mater. Or maybe there's a rope regarding how he unsuccessfully tried to sell his wife's car to our classmate Nadia all semester. And when that failed, he even tried to sell it to her on our final exam. Needless to say, I don't think Nadia ever got the car. There is certainly a cow for his work in helping to found and implement the CLEO program, which sought to increase minority law school enrollment at law schools across the United States. CLEO was modeled after Emory University's Pre-Start program, which was created in 1966 as an alternative to the LSAT. Pre-Start guaranteed law school admission for Black graduates who completed the program, and Professor Gozansky was instrumental in making sure that there was funding for Pre-Start and CLEO to succeed. And maybe there's a rope for all of the names he butchered of my classmates or flat out changed when he liked his better. For example, my good friend Ian is now affectionately known as Jan, which he was adoringly named by Professor Gozansky. He had good reasoning, of course. Although some here would disagree, those other professors in the room, there is certainly a cow for being told very early and learning to believe that everything is a contract. Absolutely everything. But lastly, there is a cow, I would say, a bull or a heifer, the mother of all cows, for making contracts enjoyable at 8 a.m. in the morning. Most of us felt like we were high as Georgia pine from all the laughter that came from your class. Years from now, those of us who are not working in the transactional field, and sadly some of them who are, won't know what the mailbox rule is, or detrimental reliance, or that point where we forget what consideration is because we just think it's something that Southerners have more than other Northerners. But Professor Gozansky, on behalf of the student body at Emory University, we are indebted to you. You came into each class prepared, excited, and poised to teach us all there was to know about contracts. Some of us ended up being on your dreadful board once, twice, and even 3 times for that one student who had 3 majors in undergrad. She was very overzealous. But you were a joy and lessened the burden that we came to know as law school. If I am allowed but one cow-sized regret, it is that students who come behind me will not have the pleasure, the honor, and the privilege of having you as their professor. You will be sorely missed, and this time, seriously, go on vacation and do not come back.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Our next speaker is someone who also had a great experience in Professor Gozansky's class. It would be Carl Mullis of the class of 75. Having gotten to know Carl over the years, I can't even imagine how law school buildings survived with Gozansky and Mullis in one classroom at the same time. Love to hear more about that. Over the years, Carl's become a close friend to Nat and Libby, as so many of Nat's students have become friends with him and his family. And I guess Nat and Libby even introduced Carl to his wife. Carl's an active alumnus. He's been honored with our Distinguished Alumni Award. And now we're going to hear a little bit about Carl's experiences with Nat Gozansky.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to speak longer than 5 minutes, so I'm sorry. I'll tell you up front. I first met Nat in 1972 when I was a first-year student at the law school. It was the first year that they opened Gambrell Hall, this very building. Everything was new, and we were all excited. I had Nat for 3 classes, for family law, for a negotiation seminar, which was an interesting course because he taught negotiations, and we would do role playing, et cetera. It was then I learned just what a great negotiator Nat is. He's continued to impress me over the years with his negotiating skills. Most recently, several years ago, he showed me what a great negotiator he was. The other course that he taught me was a course on the U.S. Supreme Court where we did role playing, and we actually pretended to be the justices of the Supreme Court. It was a seminar, and we would have cases that the court was going to face in the upcoming terms. And it was just a wonderful course. If you can think about that, you get to argue before and do briefs that the Supreme Court's going to be hearing. Then you're the justices of the Supreme Court. You decide, you learn all of the public policy reasons about that. And there's just no better way to have learned how judges think. Stan Birch would appreciate that. I saw Stan out in the crowd here earlier. It was probably, well, it was the best class that I had at Emory Law School. Nat and I, because of that course and other courses, became good friends. After I graduated, we became even better friends and got to know each other. And as the dean indicated, Nat introduced my wife, my lovely wife, Babe, to me. And for that, I'm always grateful. On the way over here this evening, I asked Babe, well, what should I say about Nat? If you were Nat, what would you want to hear today? And I was kind of interested in what she said. She said, well, there's a couple of things. One, I've always been impressed with how Nat's kept up with his former students, what the relationships were that he had with his former students. He just knew everyone that he had taught. He kept up with them over the years, and he helped them, just like he helped them in law school. And that was just quite an impressive thing to Babe. Then she said something that I'm not sure I liked. She says, well, he's not pretentious. You know, you and he come to the house and we go walking in the morning and you look like a couple of homeless people. So she appreciated that about him. I'm glad she appreciated that about him. And she said, the third thing is he's a good father. And that's a very important thing to Nat. And that's something that she very much appreciated from him. And then she said, there was one final thing, is something that you said about your father when he passed away. And that's that he was an extraordinary, ordinary man. About that, an extraordinary, ordinary man. Babe, I said, well, Babe, I'm not sure that law school professors like to be talked about as ordinary, even if they're ordinary. That she said, well, all right, he's an extraordinary man. And that he is. He's an extraordinary man, and has shown that over the years. Now, Nat loves classic cars, travel, barbecue. The community barbecue is his favorite place. Thai food, the theater, getting a good deal. That's high on his list. Boats, baseball, helping people, family, and Emory Law School. Over the years, as you've heard and you'll hear throughout this evening, he's loved the students at Emory. That's what he's been most concerned about, is helping his students. And over the years, the students have come to recognize that. It took a while, first year or two, it might not have happened, but over the years, they began to recognize how much he cared for them. And today, he's really an iconic figure, the best loved figure probably in the law school. But Nat knows that for the law school to be great, not only must it care about its students, but it also must care about diversity. It needs to do all that it can to increase diversity. It'll help make it a better place. And over the years, that's been a real goal of Nat, as you'll also learn about. He's done everything that you could do to increase the diversity in this place. Now, he's done that by helping to select the missions officers, helping create the policy of the missions committee, many different ways. The CLEO program, he's done many things to increase the diversity here. And Emory's a better place, a much better place because of that. But Nat didn't help Emory just by increasing its diversity here. Actually partially responsible for that. No. Individual be the first Jewish professor at this law school. You know, everyone at that time in 1967 times when they had gatherings, a professor would have a party. A professor at Emory. He paved the way in ways that we haven't thought about. And we don't have to think about that now and think how marvelous that is. That that's not an issue anymore. But that's something that Nat did for all of us. As many of you probably know, I love classic movies. And thinking about what I was going to say today, I thought about a 1939 film called Goodbye, Mr. Chips. I saw it on the DVD. I assume that's where you saw it also. It's a 1939 film. Robert Donnet was the star of the movie. He was Mr. Chipping. He won the Academy Award that year, 1939, for this film. He beat out Clark Gable for Gone with the Wind. Yes, I'm having a singing moment. Gone with the Wind. And the story. Thank you. We all get old at times. The story of Mr. Chipping is that he was a master that came in at the turn of all-male public school. And he never had any children. And at the end of the film, there's a point where some of his friends are talking with him, and they said, "Isn't it a pity that you never had any children?" And Mr. Chipping, or Mr. Chip, looks at him and says, "You're wrong, because I had thousands of children, all male, all the children that came to the school." And that's the same way. Nat has 3 wonderful children, 3 children he loves dearly, but he also has hundreds or even thousands of students here at Emory that he loves dearly and that love him dearly. Over the years, I've learned that Nat's a man full of grace. He has that inner peace and grace that comes from knowing that he's made the world a better place. He's a wise man that has learned from his mistakes. He's a caring man that has helped many of us in our times of need. But most of all, he's a man that's my friend and blessed my life for 40 years. And for that, I'm most grateful. We love you, Nat. God bless.
And one of the themes for the evening is how much Nat has done in terms of the admissions for the school, the diversity of the school, and all that he has done with the policies there, and also what a great person he is with whom to work. Next we're going to hear from someone who was a staff member who worked with Nat, Linnell Cadre, who was headed admissions here for a long time. We're sorry that Linnell has now left the law school. However, she's the Assistant Dean for Admissions and Student Services at the Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing. So, Linnell.
Good evening. I'm so honored to be here to celebrate Nat's retirement and to share some of my memories with you. I came to Emory about 18 years ago, and as you can imagine, I have lots and lots of stories I can tell about Nat, but I won't. We only have 3 minutes, I think. So, but I will tell you about my very first day here at the law school. So Nat came into my office, and it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he came in really just to kind of check with me to make sure things were going okay. And I was unpacking boxes, And Nat's eyes landed on this big, like, Quick Trip Pepsi cup. And he seriously looked at me and he said, "What's that?" And I said, it's my drink from lunch. Would you like some?" And he said, "No." Now, this was about 2 years before the Olympics, and Libby was working at Coke. And I was new to Emory, and I was new to Atlanta, so I really didn't know the enormity of Robert Woodruff and Coke. I was from New Orleans, I only knew Pepsi. And so Nat went on to say, "Well, Linnell," as he would always say, "you cannot have that here." He said, "You will have to acquire a taste for Coke." Now, I had just arrived from the university up the highway in Macon, where I had a really crazy boss. So my immediate thought was, bingo, crazy again. I can surely pick him. So I didn't really know Nat, so I really didn't know how to take him, and he was really serious about this Coke thing. So as I was driving, I commuted here from Macon for the first 2 years, and as I was driving back, I was thinking, geez, I don't know if I'm gonna make it with this man. He's crazy, he's trying to tell me what to drink and what I cannot drink, and I just don't know if that's gonna work out. But I decided the next day I needed to come back. And I came back again and again and again, and eventually I got to know Nat a little bit better, and I quickly acquired a taste for Coke. So there are many stories like that I can tell about Nat, but I won't. Like the time Nat and I traveled from New York to DC by train, and we were seated in the quiet car, and we were reprimanded 3 times because Nat wouldn't stop talking. Or I could really tell you about the times when I would call Libby at night to tell her to remind Nat to wear a tie because we had a special event the next day. And he never had a tie unless I told him. And was sort of like his work wife too, because I also had to tell him which tie to wear. But I won't tell you about that. Or I could also tell you about the times when I would have my 3 p.m. meeting with Nat, and I would go to his office and he was taking his nap and I had to wake him up. But I won't tell you about that. I could tell you about times when I applied for jobs outside this law school, and Nat would listen intensely, and he'd ask lots of questions. Where are you going? What are you doing? What are they asking you? And then I would come back to the law school, and Nat had an offer on the table that was just a tad bit sweeter than the offer that was being given to me. But I won't tell you about that. I could tell you that in the 18 years that I've known Nat, we've never had an argument. And we've never really had any serious disagreements, other than that Coke thing. But I won't tell you about that. So it is clearly these memories and many more that I cherish about Nat. And I want to fast forward a little bit from those 18 years, that first day back in the law school, to about a year ago. Now, as many of you know, Nat has a cabin in the mountains. And each year, he and Libby graciously allow my family to spend some quality time there. As my daughter says, we summer at Nat's cabin. And it's really quite quiet and peaceful at the cabin. There's no cable. So we're forced to sort of entertain ourselves, and we're a TV family, so that's sometimes a challenge. So this past summer, about 2 or 3 weeks after we left the cabin, Nat called in his daddy-like, kind of angry voice, and he says, "Which one of the kids owe me an apology?" And my response was, "Oh no, what happened?" And he says, "Someone downloaded an illegal movie while you all were at the cabin this summer. I know you didn't do it because you're too old, you don't know anything about that. So check with the kids, and you have the guilty one, call me." So I did. I checked with my 2 young adult children, adults, and sure enough, Chrissy, my daughter, had downloaded a movie. And she was so embarrassed and apologetic, and she said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that it was illegal. I'm so sorry, I need to call Nat right away." And I warned her, I said, "Well, he's a little angry, and just be careful, and good luck." I said, you call me when you're done." So Chrissy called Nat right away, and she called me back, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, he was so sweet." Nat said, "Chrissy, don't you worry your pretty little head. Nat'll take care of it." That's not what he said to me. A few weeks later, my newly married son and his wife came over, and they had an announcement to make. They'd only been married probably less than a month. "We're pregnant, and we think it happened at the cabin." Excuse my French. I said, "Oh shit, I have to call Nat." I said, "Oh gosh, Nat's never gonna let us go back to this cabin." So I immediately called Nat, and I said, "Nat, I had one child downstairs downloading an illegal movie, and the other one was downstairs downloading a baby." I said, "But I was upstairs reading my book." Needless to say, Nat was entertained and thrilled. In essence, it wasn't really about that. It was about my grandbaby being conceived at his cabin. And he and Libya's decided to put a plaque on the front door saying that the cadre baby was conceived here. Now, I advised Nat that if he would just put cable in that cabin, we'd be all good. And I really wanted to come back. So I don't know, but last Friday, little Avery Elizabeth was born and named after Libby. So as you can see, my relationship with Nat goes far beyond the walls of this law school. He has been such a dear colleague and such a dear friend. I can't look at him, by the way, that's why I'm not looking at him, to us. And JoJo and Leah and little Avy couldn't be here, and Chrissy had to work, but they send their regards. Joseph is here, and we both just want to say we love you so much, Nat. You've been such a great friend and a special friend to us. And I'm glad you're retiring because we'll get to spend more time together, I hope. If not, we'll get to spend more time at the cabin, and maybe I'll have some more grandbabies. Thank you, Nat. We love you.
Great to see Nat through the years, and thank you also, Linnell, for those comments. I especially appreciate them because Nat and Libby have often invited me to come up to their cabin as well. I've never made it, but I do have 2 teenage daughters, so not until you have cable TV. Now we're going to hear from two folks who are both staff at Emory Law School and alumni of Emory Law School. We have Carolyn Bregman, class of 1982, who was actually in Libby's class. Carolyn took Nat's contracts and family law class. I guess Libby was in the other section. And Carolyn worked here as the head of career services and now works with the Emory Alumni Association. Now, Ethan Rosenzweig was a Woodruff Scholar here, which is the highest honor we bestow on our admitted students. Nat was on the Woodruff Selection Committee and had the wisdom not to stand in the way of the obvious choice for that honor. Ethan has worked here in a variety of different capacities, working with alumni, and currently as the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid. So, Ethan and Carolyn.
I thought he was going to tell my grades from Nat's classes when I was back there. I was a little afraid of that, but they were okay. I feel like I'm up with my little brother on the Bema. And we're going to do
the beautiful
reading.
brother.
Age before beauty, so I will go first. In 1979, back when certain classes like contracts were a year long, Nat was my contracts professor, and there are more people from the class of 82 here than usually at our reunion. So class of 82, shout out. A huge turnout from the class because of how much we loved you as our professor. And you weren't just a professor, you were our teacher. We felt engaged by you. We had fun, we learned, we laughed, we talked about, I remember what a novation is. We would talk about standing novations. I think you'll get one later tonight. It was a treat to be in your class, so much so that I took another class, not knowing that 10 years later I would come back to have a day-long interview as probably the only person interested in being the head of career services at the law school. And Nat threw a tea, and I knew, well, he remembers me, this must be a good thing, and I got to come and work for Nat here at the law school. David, you expressed exactly what I was going to say. There is no one I've ever known who handed a problem and get a gleam in his eye and say, an opportunity, let's figure this out. Always about the students, always about making something work. There was always that impetus, that drive to solve it in a way that worked best for everyone, and he was gleeful at the same time. And I thought Nat led a very glamorous life. He had a boat. They went out to dude ranches. He had classic cars. I mean, he was a fun guy. And whenever I got to spend time with Nat, like if I would go up to his office and the door would be open and he would be in there, and you would be greeted with a warmth that you would know, come on in, sit down on the couch, let's talk about an old story, let's hear about something that happened that was wonderful. And you have been such a mentor and a friend to me. Grateful for having you in my life, for knowing where to go for dim sum, for knowing where to go to get my car repaired, and just for being such a love and such a mensch. And I love you, Nat. Thanks for everything.
Now I just want to apologize to you for a few things that I've done over the years. I'm sorry that I committed a homeowners association violation at your house when you let me stay there and my car leaked gallons of oil all over the private driveway. And then I'm sorry that after my car did that, you loaned me your car with a full tank of gas and I returned it with no gas in it, which you still remind me of 5 years later. And then I'm sorry that when I was trying to find a place to live and I was staying with you, that my boxes that I left at your house, which are still probably at your house, you haven't forgotten about those, and you remind me about those all the time as well. I'm sorry for leaving underwear at the house. Unfortunately, I don't think I conceived anything at the house, so I don't have the great stories that Linnell does. But more importantly, I'm so sorry this is the only opportunity I've had to say thank you. And I probably say it in passing, but I've never had the moment, I think, just to let you know how special you are to me and all of the students that you have adopted for all different reasons, but because you see the specialness in all of us. I think, we're more than students to so many in the community, but to you especially, you see the person behind us. So many of us see you through the life cycle of a student here as a prospective, and then a student, as an alum, as a new alum, a seasoned alum. And all along the way, there's one constant. You're always a colleague to us. That's not going to change. You're still here when you're retired and you're still around the corner. That's not going to change. And what's always going to perpetually be here is that we're going to live the values that you've given us will be here in perpetuity because of what you've taught all these students and all these alums that we will carry on. One more thing, we need to recognize Libby, because Libby, you've been such a part with Nat and with all of us here. If there was a First Lady of the Law School, I think it would be you for forever. And I hope you know how much we all appreciate you as well. So I know we have other tributes, but Nat, we all love you. Thank you so much for changing so many lives here in this showing, and I'm looking for even more stories in the years to come.
Being a colleague of Nat or being a student of Nat always felt like you were part of Nat's family. And you also felt you got to know about Nat's family. Nat is so proud of all members of his family. We got to know Libby, I think as Ethan appropriately put it, First Lady of the Law School. And Ethan actually hangs out with other First Ladies, so that's a very impressive accolade. And also, we'd get to hear a lot about Nat's children. He was so proud of his children. We got to hear all about the wonderful accomplishments of them and feel like we're really all part of Nat's greater family, which was something to which we all aspired. So I'm very pleased that now we're able to hear something about Nat from his children. We'll be hearing from Michelle Harrison, the Honorable Michelle Harrison, who is currently a judge in the Douglas County Juvenile Court. We'll be hearing from Dr. Elliot Gozansky, who is a PhD and an MD. And we'll be hearing from Shayna Gozansky, graduate of Bard College, who will receive her master's degree in fine arts from Brown University in May. A very distinguished family from a very distinguished lineage. Please.
Beauty does come before age. No, I'm kidding. I was told to come up here and honor my dad tonight. And I thought about it and I realized that really is an easy task. It is very easy for the idea to honor my dad, but I don't have enough time to go over all the things I want to honor about him. So I sat down with the thesaurus, trying to think of the right adjectives to describe him as an honoree without sounding like a eulogy. And then I realized that I really had a lot of great words to say on my own and decided to include these following words, but they're not limited to this. He's a mentor, a sounding board, a helper of decision-making, an advisor, a motivator, a spectator, a leader and a follower, a sidekick, an achiever, a listener and talker, a shoulder, an ear, and a heart, an awesome dad, grandfather, uncle, and other family parts, and most of all, a reliable and best friend. He told me when I was first appointed to my position that as long as I made a decision or a ruling within the confines of what the law prescribes, and I did my best, and I make my decision that I felt was fair and just, then I had done a job well done. Dad, may we all, along with all the walls of the school, always be a representation of your job well done. I love you.
Good evening. I'm Elliot. It's usually of little doubt that I'm his son, if you take a look at the picture there. I'd like to share with you a few of my Emory Law School treasures. The first, this is a little tough for you guys to see maybe out in the back. This is a little tin car that Mel Gutterman gave me from his toy collection when I was a kid. May his memory be a blessing. Frank Vandal, your Pantera. I loved drooling over that car when it was in the parking lot. Yeah, I miss it dearly. This is a glass paperweight that my dad used to have in his office that he'd let me play with when I was there and bored and probably bothering him. Now my son plays with it in my office. Emory and the law school have always been a part of my life, from being one of the last children born at Emory Hospital to my dad delivering the commencement speech at my graduation from Oxford College, where he shamelessly warned Dean Murdy that he was after his job. Well, until he realized that he'd have to wear a suit and tie every day. Dad gives all of us something to treasure, something that we strive for in my field. Dad provides continuity of care. We've heard this theme before today. Care for the students who weren't sure where else to turn. Care for the alums facing their career challenges. Care for his junior colleagues learning the academic ropes. And care for the law school deans when they needed a sounding board, all of whom, including us, have suffered Dad's patented line. Let me give you a hypothetical. That phrase we have grown to love with the trust that he will be guiding us in the right direction. Shocked at the thought of his actual retirement, our only concern as a family is that he will no longer have the outlet of a captive audience willing to pay good money to listen to him for 50 straight minutes. The thought of taking on that responsibility frightens us to the core. We thank you today, Dad, for all that you have shared and done for all of us. We love you.
We are all here today because this man, this Gozo, has taught us something. He's taught some of us about contracts. He's taught some of us about dressing casually. He's taught some of us about the beauty of an original dashboard in a 1963 Dodge Dart. But there is also something he has taught all of us by example, simply by showing, and that is a lesson in community. Throughout my life, I have seen his extraordinary devotion to building an increasingly diverse student body and faculty. He has been a champion for every single student, but especially for women, students of color, and the LGBT community. His work with the Council on Legal Education Opportunity reflects his commitment to building a profession of true equality. And his work in Hungary and Georgia make what has been a local commitment a global one. This is a man who walks the walk. He knows that a legal system based on equality begins here, in a classroom or an office. It is an extraordinary thing to have a parent who takes action every day to make the world better than it was the day before and inspires you to do the same. I have never been more proud to have this flannel professor for a father. So please join me in welcoming the man who has taught us more than even he realizes to the podium, our dad, Professor Nathaniel Gozansky.
This may be tougher than I expected. I don't know where to begin in thanking all of you for being here and thanking all of you who've just said all these wonderful things. I thought I was going to get roasted, but frankly, I don't think I got too much heat. I particularly want to thank you, David, for flying in and turning around and flying back out. David regrets my retirement more than you might realize. I have sold hundreds of his contracts casebook over the years. And with this retirement, he is going to see his royalties plummet. I'm fortunate. I have several former students who are teachers today. There are two that I want to specifically mention. They were students at Vanderbilt, not students at Emory. One is Harriet King, who unfortunately took ill and couldn't be here tonight. Harriet was my research assistant when I started teaching at Vanderbilt, and her father, George, was on the faculty here. And when she learned from her father that Emory was looking for a contracts professor, she suggested that they contact me, and so Harriet was sort of the broker that got me to leave Nashville, which at the time was a dry county, and so I was happy to come to Atlanta. The other is Frank Vandal. Frank, if you'll stand. Frank was a student of mine at Vanderbilt, and a few years later, after he got his SJD at Wisconsin and was teaching at Ohio Northern, we bumped into each other at a meeting, and he indicated that he really would like to get out of Ada, Ohio. I don't know why. And joined the faculty here 3 years after I did. And so Frank will just stay on course, stay focused, and do 4 more years. The record that I have set will be broken, and I can't think of anybody I'd rather break that record of longevity than my friend Frank. I'm so very grateful for the wonderful colleagues over the years, from the great folks who maintain Gambrel Hall, the extraordinary staff, the faculty who've been a source of joy and inspiration through all these years. And I count on all these people. I count all these people as dear friends. I need to give a special thanks to Joella Rissick and her development team, particularly Eric Blackwell, Cass Blackburn, and Tim Hussey, who worked so hard to make sure that this would be a special night, and it surely is for me and my family a special night. And a special thanks to Corky Gallo, photographer extraordinaire, who, if I had been willing to slip him a few dollars, says he could have taken about 20 pounds off of that photo. But as we all know, I'm a very frugal person, and I just wouldn't do it. During my tenure at the law school, the faculty has grown 4-fold. The student body has doubled. And more importantly, I've been here since the student body went from basically all white male with a scattering of white women to one that is a third non-white and about 50% women. When I started teaching, I was an outspoken advocate of student freedom and responsibility. The law school was not in loco parentis. I did not take attendance. I was impatient with students who were unprepared. I was pretty much a smartass. And I was opposed to the Vietnam War. Over time, I've come to understand that law students are not necessarily full-blown adults, that they benefit from some caring paternalism. So I do take attendance. And I do not allow computers and smartphones in class. And I don't get so upset with a lack of preparation, nor am I so much of a smartass. But I still believe the Vietnam War was wrong. How blessed am I to have been affiliated with this great institution and this law school during what may be the most dynamic period in American social history, 1967 to 2012. Civil rights, women's rights, just an amazing, amazing time to be involved and to be active. It has been an honor to teach so many generations of law students and to interact with so many on a personal level, helping them to sort out a variety of personal and professional challenges. To me, the core mission of this institution is to teach students the law and how to use it for the greater good. The greatest psychic compensation that I have is knowing of the personal and professional success and satisfaction of those students. I could not have done all this without the love and support of my family. And there's one special member of my family who could not be here this evening. You have to bear with me here. My mother. At 98, she just cannot travel. When she was 42, she was widowed and left with 4 children, ages 18 to 9. She saw to it that we each reached our potential. She is a remarkable woman, and I want to thank her publicly for all she has done and for all that she is to our family. I'm grateful to Corky, who's making a DVD of this evening so that she can see this wonderful event. You've now met my 3 kids. Many of you in my classes heard about them as I intertwined them in one hypothetical or another. If you were in family law, you might recall my apocryphal story of recognizing when one achieves adulthood, that's at age 18. And so I would claim that as each child turned 18, I would pack their suitcase, I would throw them a nice party, and then I would usher them to the door. Because they were adults and I wasn't legally responsible anymore. But if they wanted to stay, we could negotiate, make a deal, and we would keep them around. Well, truly apocryphal, but a legal point made. I sold cars, mostly Libby's cars, told stories about cows and ropes that you need to know the whole story to fully appreciate, but what have you. And all in all, have had just a lot of fun doing this wonderful work. Now, I must say that it occurred to me as I was standing outside chatting with some of you, and in particular somebody who had recently retired, and said, you know, I used to say that my goal in life, my professional goal, was to produce enough lawyers so that every individual American could have their own individual lawyer. I apparently have been very successful. And so I'm going to step down and slow down the process. I know I'm supposed to say something profound at a time like this, but frankly, the evening has made me it's just too joyous, too great. I'm too grateful, and I'm at a loss for a profound remark. But let me close by introducing the one person who did not come up on the stage, but who is, as many of you know, the most important person in my life. My bride of 35 years, the source of the good things in my life, Ms. Libby Johnson. I thank all of you for your friendship, your collegiality, and your support. I stand before you counting myself as a very lucky man. And I'm looking forward to getting out there and being able to hug and chat with each and every one of you. So, Dean, if you'll be kind enough to bring this program to a close, we are now standing between the wine, the beer, and the food.
Before we do bring this to a close, we do have some special presentations for Nat. So I think Denise has those. First of all, I know. The chair. Well, let's start. Why don't you sit in the chair, which is a standard Emory chair we'd love to give with a great deal of love to you. And this is a very special gift. This is from the collection of Carl Mullis, who we got to hear from earlier. Nat apparently saw that in Carl's collection and indicated that of all the ones that he had seen, this was one that really he treasured and meant a lot to him. And Carl, thank you so much for donating that so we can give that to Nat. So here it is, Nat. A special pleasure. Well, just in closing, a very few comments. It's really summarizing much of what we've heard this evening. I've heard that Nat has been here for about half the time there has been at Emory Law School, and law school has grown a great deal. So it is certainly true that more than half of Emory Law students have had the chance to benefit from Nat and all that he has brought here. In some ways, this is a very different law school from the law school that greeted Nat in 1967, as we've heard. The student body then, predominantly male, overwhelmingly white, a faculty that was not diverse really in any way. Today, through what Nat has done, a much more diverse student body, a much more diverse faculty, a school that's really been international in its orientation. Nat's been central to all of that. He figured out these foreign junkets were a good deal, and he was going to take them. So now when Nat talks about Georgia, he's talking about the other Georgia on the Black Sea. So in many ways, this school is the school it is today because of what Nat has done. He has transformed this into the place that we all love. In some important ways, law school is the same as the school that greeted Nat when he arrived here. It's a warm and caring community for all of us, the students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And it's been like that because of what Nat has done, the way that he has treated all of us, all the students, as individuals, as members of his family. At the beginning, it was like an older brother, and then Nat was more like an uncle, and then maybe more like a grandpa. Well, anyhow, Nat's treated everyone as a member of the family, and not just students. I know as a new faculty member here, Nat took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, as he has for generations of other faculty there. So Nat has really been part of transforming this and making this a better law school, but also been an essential part of keeping this the great law school it has always been. I'd say that's why generations of faculty and students have loved Nat and have chosen to honor him. And of course, it's clear that when the question was what would be the best way to honor Nat, it was going to be about the students that Nat has meant so much to, and they have meant so much to him. So we're pleased to say that there was a student scholarship set up in his honor, and that scholarship has benefited a great deal from the generosity of one of his students, one Facundo Bacardi. This is a student who had very little in common with Nat, except they were both from Florida, and they both enjoyed strong drink. But they were very different, but nevertheless, Facundo gravitated to Nat, looked to Nat as a mentor, as an uncle, as a member of his family, and Nat helped Facundo through his time at Emory as he has helped so many other students. So we're pleased that Facundo was able to establish a $500,000 challenge and matching grant to really help get this Gozansky student scholarship underway. I think Joella Rissick, the Director of Development, wanted us to put pledge cards out at the bar. We said no, but they are at the registration table, so you can find them there. But more important than that, through this scholarship and through the generosity of Facundo and others, we're sure, though, that Nat may retire, the Gozansky name will always be there. And as long as there is an Emory Law School, there will be a Gozansky name there to support and help all the students. Well, having said that, as Nat pointed out, the most dangerous place in the world is between Nat and a drink. So it's about time to bring these proceedings to a close. But I do want to thank all of you for attending, and thank you, Nat, for all you have done for all of us gathered here, for all you have done for me, for all you have done for thousands and thousands of members of the Emory Law community. You have touched our lives, and you have made it better, and we are so grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Can I leave this here?
Yeah. All right.
Let's go have a drink together.
Yeah.